Israel remains in a political deadlock. Blue and White Party leader Benny Gantz has failed to form a government, just as his rival Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did a month ago.
Over the past 28 days, I've left no stone unturned. I've cleared away each grain of sand in a bid to form a government that would bring Israel a leadership of honor, a leadership of morality, of values, a leadership that has been forgotten. There is a right-wing bloc that finds it hard to see, that insists on seeing only the personal interests of one person.
Gantz and Netanyahu were given 4 weeks each by President Rivlin to build a coalition. That was after a second election this year left them nearly tied in September. The lack of a clear winner also means a loss of economic opportunities. Investments in fixed assets fell 6% in the third quarter, with businesses in wait-and-see mode. The OECD trimmed its overall growth estimate for Israel from 3.3% to 2.9% next year. And the country's budget deficit has grown to nearly 4% of GDP from 2.9% last year. To rein in the deficit, the country would need spending cuts and tax increases, analysts say. But without a government, there have been no reforms. For the first time in the country's history, the president has now tasked lawmakers with finding a new prime minister.
In the coming 21 days, there'll be no bloc or party. Each and every one of you will sit with yourself and your conscience, and you will have to answer one question only. What is my duty towards the state of Israel and its citizens?
In the meantime, Netanyahu, who is fighting a series of corruption charges, remains in power. But this week, the US said it will no longer consider Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank to be illegal. Analysts say that's likely to give Netanyahu a boost. But some Israelis say it's time for a change.
The government is ruled by older and primitive men, simply ignoring reality, only caring for themselves, committing horrible crimes, really horrifying things. And this is how it is, 3 times like a roulette. It's unfortunate and sad, and I wouldn't be proud of it.
If lawmakers once again fail to establish a government, voters will be sent back to the polls for an unprecedented third time in a year. Sibel Karkush, TRT World.
Well, let's get more on this from economist Howard Rosen. He joins me from Jerusalem. Thank you for joining me on the program. Let's talk first about these charges against Netanyahu. Israel's Attorney General has formally charged him for bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. So what comes next for Netanyahu? Does this spell the end of his political career?
Well, we've got a two-track process going on right now. The first is, let's say, the legal process. Which now that we have an indictment, the next step will be, of course, a trial. And then we don't know when the trial will start. We don't know how long the trial will take. And it's even possible that there could be some kind of negotiated settlement before going to trial. That's what's happened in other cases. So that's one track. On the second track is the government, is the election track. That one, interestingly enough, is very clear how it's going to proceed. For the next 3 weeks, 21 days, anyone in the parliament, any person, regardless of their party, if they're able to put together 61 people, because the Parliament of Israel has 120, so 61 is a basic majority. If anyone can put together 61 supporters, they submit a petition with their names to the Speaker of the Parliament, and then they have 14 days to create a government. So that's a separate track that's going on independently of the trials or of the indictment of Mr. Netanyahu's problems. Now, it's interesting to note, I mean, you asked the question, is he going to resign? You know, there's very little indication that he will resign. And I'll tell you 2 reasons. Number one, this is very important, and this is just specific here to the case in Israel. Although a parliamentarian, if he is indicted, he is required to resign his seat, but the prime minister is not required. And you see, this is very important. This has been missed, I think, by a lot of analysts. This is why this last election was really about an exit strategy for Mr. Netanyahu. He knew that he's 72 years old. He knew his time was coming, but he didn't want to resign in disgrace. And so that was the whole thing of how would we negotiate a nice exit strategy for Mr.
Let me just
Netanyahu.
interrupt you really quickly, because we've never seen anything like this in Israeli politics before. How serious of a political crisis is this for Israel?
This is serious. But not only have we never seen this before in terms of an indicted sitting prime minister, but it's interesting to note that it's never really, our prime ministers here in Israel, most of them, almost all of them, have pretty much either left because of illness or left because of weakness and in disgrace. Remember, the previous prime minister is Ehud Olmert, who he resigned himself, and that's why he had to go to jail, because when he was indicted, and he had resigned before, he was indicted and he went to jail. And Mr. Netanyahu is learning from that experience. That's why he refused to resign, and he has taken this process all the way. Now, I think the next chance is that he might negotiate something instead of going to trial. As we can see from Mr. Netanyahu, he is the ultimate negotiator, and he's always looking to protect himself. This is, if you were following, this is the option that the president of the country put on the table, which was a unity government, but with Mr. Netanyahu being the first one in rotation, because he had to continue to be prime minister, because otherwise, if he was indicted, he could have to go to jail. But if he's indicted as a prime minister, he doesn't go to jail.
Okay, we're going to leave it there for now. And we'll certainly be waiting to see what happens over the next few weeks. Howard Rosen joining us from Jerusalem. Thank you for your perspective today.